Hi, everybody. It's Angelo Caruso. I'm here with Mark Einhaus. He's a favorite photographer of mine. How are you, Mark?
Pretty good, Michael. How are you doing this morning?
Doing great. Thanks for being on with me. We're going to give people some great photo tips and even a couple of serious strategies for those of you building a brand or doing something more significant with your photographs. Before we get started, Mark, I wanted to get your favorite photographer. Who do you like?
Duane Michals. Duane Michals is someone who was really interesting to me very early, even in my college career. And I was fortunate enough to meet him on a birthday one time. And he actually picked one of my photographs over like there was more than 100 photographs that were posted on a big studio wall. And he came by and he looked at it and pointed. It's like, I don't know why I like this, but I like it, which was good enough for me.
Yeah. I'll bet it was, man. When a legend like that singles you out. What type of photography work is your stock in trade right now? Tell everybody.
Well, I do a lot of different things, photographically speaking, and video-wise too, and it all depends on what the need of what my client is looking to achieve. So I try to figure out and speak with them to best give them the product that they're looking for, collaboratively speaking as well. But
Okay.
there's a big range, like I say, from just product photography to corporate headshots and to telling stories. I had a nice job working with Plastics News, which is a division of Crane's Detroit, doing some quick hit videos at their big convention a couple of months ago. So we did three videos in one day, which was a challenge, but they were all very happy with them, and they were able to use them the very next day on the floor of the show.
Nice. You heard Mark mention Detroit. Mark is located in Southeast Michigan. I think he'll work anywhere you'd like him to be, but a lot of his clients tend to be in the Michigan area. Mark, let's give some solid tips for people that want to improve their photography, and we'll kind of wrap up our session today by delivering a couple of strategies for people who are really serious about what I call image marketing, a marketing of your image through images. Let's start with a basic fundamental tip that people violate every day on Facebook, and that is the idea of utilizing a primary light source, the keyword being primary. Can you speak to this?
Yeah, that's really one of the most important parts of photography, is understanding where your key light, your primary light, is coming from, and utilizing that to your best ability. And if you're in any type of a situation, you need to understand where it's coming from and use it to your advantage. If you have it in a place that is too close to someone's head and it's shining down, you get this really harsh light, and you get hard lines. Or if you have it coming down from underneath, where you almost look like an early horror movie type of a view, which isn't really going to help anyone unless you're looking to get that level of attitude out of it.
Yeah, which is a good way to get revenge on people you don't like. You just put them in negative light. So
Yeah.
this is how I remember it. If the light's coming from overhead, a stark fluorescent light from direct, or those recessed, what are they called, can lights, directly
Mm-hmm.
overhead, you make the subject look tired. And if you do the same thing from the bottom, if the direct light source is from the bottom, you make the subject look dead. So unless you want your subject to look tired or dead, avoid directly overhead and directly from the bottom. Great tip. Let's
Mm-hmm.
talk about, and you mentioned primary. I remember from theater class in high school,
Yeah.
there are actually three light sources most of the time. There's what you call the key light, which is coming from directly, if I'm the subject, it's coming from directly in front of me, but probably not in the center. It's probably off to one side, yeah?
Yes. It's very similar to the way I have myself lit right now.
Okay, very good. And
Yeah.
then also there's a light from behind. It's called
It can be called like a kicker, or
kicker.
it could be a hair light too, depending on what the need of it is. But a kicker is like right here, where it's defining the side of my face right now.
Yeah.
It's really kind of a soft version of it, but it's helping defining shape and texture.
Yeah, and I think you're obliquely referencing a third light source, which could be a fill coming in from the side. I do see that little
Right.
glisten on the left side of your head, which keeps
Yes.
your head from being one-dimensional. Just
Right.
like the kicker in the back, ideally, like in really good lighting, I don't quite see it on my head or yours today. You'd see a little halo around the top of my head, just really,
Yeah,
really tiny, or maybe
right,
an outline in my shoulders. And this is
right.
to give depth of field and definition to the photograph, correct?
It gives an edge. More importantly, is that it defines an edge, and that's a really big important part of any level of imaging is making clean edges so you can see the edges.
Yeah, and if you're just shooting with your iPhone, the deal is that you probably aren't going to start thinking about three types of light sources in the heat
No,
of the moment. So just focus
right.
on the primary light source that Mark's talking about, which is the one that comes from the front. Make sure
Mhm.
that there's always a primary light source. The idea
Mhm.
is to move the subject and move your camera to a place that shows your subject in a good light, literally.
Right. Have it help you instead of fight you.
Very good. Excellent.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the second rule of photography. A great tip. Very few people think about this. I often forget it and then fix it by cropping the photo. But this
Mhm.
technique is called the rule of thirds. Could you explain it?
Well, if you look at any type of a screen or any composition, it you can divide it into thirds. So you can split the screen up, like one third is over here, one third is right in the center, and then there's a third over here.
Yep.
And if you compose your subject in one of those thirds, you can have a little bit more visually pleasing image and create a little bit of tension too. And you can apply that same rule from a horizontal perspective, not just a vertical perspective. And if you were to look at many pieces of art that have been created over the years, that rule of thirds is used quite often. And it's a really, really simple thing that one can do and one can look at when they're taking a photo with an iPhone
Sure.
and composing images.
So imagine a painter working on a blank canvas can get that thirds thing going in his head, her head, way in advance. But when you raise the viewfinder to your face, it's
Mhm.
up to you to find those thirds, and move where you need
Yeah,
to be. So you
yeah.
can see in Mark's frame, everybody, you've got the kind of the guitar set up on one third. Mark's
Mhm.
face is a second third, and they don't have to be equal thirds.
No,
And then
right.
the keyboard happening on the right side of Mark's frame. In my
Mhm.
frame, if you just took a quick thing and you asked people to recall what's happening, they might see the light bulb or the painting on this side of
Mhm.
the frame.
Mhm.
I would be
Mhm.
the middle third, and this one
Mhm.
is lacking, which is not actually a bad idea, because if the thirds are fighting each other, then it's going to create the wrong kind of attention in the viewer's eyes, correct?
That's correct. And there's another reason for doing it when you're working for any type of level of advertising is that if you have some space, for example, and you have it over where you're referencing above your where the plant is over that shoulder, it gives a space if you needed to put additional information post, for example, if you want to have some copy in here, a couple of words come in, maybe another image, you give yourself an opportunity to utilize that space post, and it gives you some flexibility.
Speakers like me, we often use a source, a whiteboard, for example. So if I position myself like this, you get a little artwork on this side for the right side of your brain. You get
Hmm.
me telling you what's happening, and then you get a written version over here, again, the third. So they're everywhere, everybody. And we want them to be in your photographs because it makes your photographs more compelling. Let's talk
Yes.
about smiling. It's a very basic, fundamental thing. And it's interesting, if you look at photos from the late 1800s, Matthew Brady and all these guys that shot the
Right.
Civil
Yeah.
War, no one's smiling. And it's not just because it's the Civil War.
Yeah.
In the early photos, they were portraits. They were very serious endeavors. But somehow Kodak or whoever started marketing the smile thing. And a photographer friend of mine told me one time, Mark, that the actual smile is quite artificial. If you think about me faking a smile,
Yeah.
it
Yeah. Yeah.
crinkles up my face in ways that aren't attractive. So you
Right.
have a special technique for capturing the smile. Would you share it with everybody? I love this.
Well, it's nice to have a conversation that's going on, and I find it's even nicer to have another person that's with me when I'm photographing any subject person. Um, and it's not the person whom I photograph that I want to do any of the talking. It's either myself or the other person. So I'm able to get true reactions out of somebody.
Mhm.
And then I'll also have them just like, I'll tell them to laugh, do an audible laugh. Ha 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 ha. What completely relaxes and takes all the tension away from your face. Instead of like say cheese, which is really a very contrived type of a look. And like you say, it may work with someone who is a pro, but they don't even do that. And it's really interesting when you look at like a pro models and how they work, and they have a big repertoire of different things that they go through for a shot. And you can hear them audibly doing things. It might not be loud, but it's enough to get the expression on their face that they're looking to achieve. Or, you give them a direction, simple direction. I want you to be bright. And they go through their bright
Yeah,
looks,
I love it. You've also mentioned to me, we've done some work together. We're going to do more work together. I really appreciate your talents. You've talked about the idea of clicking the shutter, either right before the smile or right after, because it's a more natural look. And that's a tough timing thing. But if you're taking a bunch of photos, we're not worried
Yeah,
about burning film anymore, wasting
right,
film. You just
right.
take a cluster of photos, and one of those photos is going to be more natural than the others.
Well, that's right. The peak of the smile is often not the best look, and it's often right before or right after, where the body is completely releasing all the tension in the face is being released, and you have a person looking who they are. And ultimately, in a portrait, that's exactly what you're looking to capture, is who that person is, and hopefully in their best light and expression.
I love it. Tell us about camera proximity to the subject. The general mistake most people make is they're way too far away from what they're trying to shoot. Why do we do that?
Well, it's important to understand what the subject is of any image. And when it's a portrait, well, of course, it's a person. And the way that we have ourselves cropped right here, we know that we are the main subjects of our versions of ourselves in this interview. If I were sitting in the back of the room, you might think that it's not really a shot of me, but it's a shot of the room. And that would be accurate because that's where the camera is positioned. So you always want to make sure when you're taking a photograph is that you position your camera to utilize and strengthen the subject matter as much as possible when you're taking that photograph. So a portrait, of course, is you want to get reasonably close to the person, and you want to get down, about shot level, maybe 2 buttons down, and that becomes a strong point. If you're taking a picture of somebody that's in Paris, for example, and you want the Eiffel Tower in the shot, you have to think, am I taking a photograph of the Eiffel Tower, or
Yeah,
am I taking a picture of my friend in front of the Eiffel Tower? And because the Eiffel Tower is such an iconic structure,
yeah,
you're going to say immediately when you look at that photograph, for example, this is Paris. You're not going to say, oh, that's your friend,
right.
because it's a picture of the Eiffel Tower. Now, if you position the person in the shot closer and you had the Eiffel Tower in the background, and it may even be blurred a little bit, you're still going to get a really nice sense is that you're in Paris and I'm here with my friend, and get a good portrait at the same time.
Right on. So we use the term primary as in light source earlier. We could use
Yeah.
the same concept with regard to the subject of the photo. There's a primary subject in the photo, a photo of
Mm-hmm.
your friend. And then there's a
Mm-hmm.
secondary subject in the photo, which is the Eiffel Tower.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the one that leans?
Let's hope not.
Oh, that's the Leaning Tower of Pisa. If the Eiffel
Yeah.
Tower ever starts leaning, you tilt
Yeah.
it
Right. Right.
too much.
Yeah. Don't jump.
Okay, we didn't discuss talking about this one with the team, but I want to do it right now because it occurs to me I did not do it earlier. I'm not going to tell you what the tip is, but you can, for the podcasters listening, I'll tell you what it is, but you're going to hear Mark laugh. Here's the technique. And I always forget to do this, and it's so important now because I do so many things with my iPhone that the lens gets oil from my hands on it. Sometimes it gets food on it. I would never know
Right.
looking into the
Yes.
viewfinder. So if you're
It
taking an
should.
important photograph, for gosh sakes, wipe off the lens, everybody.
Yeah. Well, and I often do that too. And well, of course, I have lens tissue, but I've had plenty of my bad breath on my camera filters. That's for sure.
We know that in photography, it's best not to have the subject, the primary subject, directly in the center of the frame. And
Hmm.
this speaks to the idea that symmetry is boring, yeah?
Yes, and it also reflects back on the rule of thirds type of an idea as well, and it gives you it just breaks up tension, um, and then it gives you an opportunity again to if you need to put something else in the shot, or if
Sure.
you have something that's in the background of the shot that you really want to sell or um, speak to whatever the brand is or whomever the person is. It's helping the subject.
Right. So to demonstrate, and if you're listening to the podcast version of this, you can watch it on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and search Michael Angelo Caruso photography tips, and this video will come up. If I position myself directly in the middle of the frame, you could argue that there are thirds still, but what happens first is the mind divides the frame by two, not three. Whereas if I'm just a little bit off center, you
Hmm.
start to the mind, it becomes a more interesting frame. The mind starts to play with what's called the composition of the frame, Mark. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And I think I think it's just a smart technique to do that. And it's the human brain puts together information so rapidly and so quick.
Mm.
And anything that you
Well,
can create
speak for yourself, man.
any way that you can create interest because like just as, referring to social media, and there is so much information and images that are available to view on social media. You want someone to stop and look at it for more than that parse of a second,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you're looking to create some level of interest to do that. And
Right.
these little tips help to get you closer to be able to. These are really simple techniques, but they really make the image far stronger, and they simplify it. And and you're able to put together this information so much faster because you've simplified it for the viewer.
Yeah. You mentioned an interesting thing that there are so many photos being posted today on Facebook and other platforms that we are really fighting for people's attention. In
Yeah,
fact, we're using tension to create attention, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
if you can use the term competitive photography, people will give your timeline, your platform more attention if you are
Hmm.
doing a better job with your photography. Our
Hmm.
last tip and more, we're going to tell you how to do that in a more serious way at the end of the program here in just a few minutes. Our final substantial tip today is this idea of not posting everything. This is a pet peeve of yours. People get back from an event and they dump everything in their SIM card, or they just click everything from the event into a Facebook album.
Yeah,
Bad
yeah.
mistake, right? Why?
Well, you really just want to show and tell a story of whatever that event is. And often you may not need more than 5 images to tell the story. It all depends on what the event is, of course, but it's the whole idea of editing yourself.
Yeah.
And that is, it can be a very challenging thing, even for pros, but the you want the viewer to look for more. It's better to be done looking at something and say, I wish there were more, instead of, I'm not going to be able to get through all of these because I'm already bored.
It's like
And
the
it's not
people that,
really helping the story.
yeah, it's like the people, sorry to interrupt. It's like the people that send you an email with 10 jokes. Just send me the best one.
Right.
Because if you're posting 10 photos that quote tell a story, and 7 of the photos retell the same story, it's not
Yeah,
interesting anymore, people. And
right.
so self-editing is a great term. I use it in the speaking business a lot. What to leave out. There's a great line from the Bob Seger song, what to leave out, what to leave in, right?
Hmm. Yes,
And this is what we have to do as photographers. You have to decide which of your photos to post. Do not post all of them.
right.
Okay.
Only your best stuff, man. Just show me your best work.
That's it. So let's talk about some tips now. We'll have some fun with this. 4 or 5 things that go without saying, and yet we have to
Yeah,
tell you about them because they're on Facebook every single day. People violating these very simple, obvious things. And the first one
yeah.
is, can we not post photos with people with their eyes closed anymore?
Yeah, yeah.
You would not
Unless
be.
it's unless it's like a dream, that the subject is dreaming, then okay, and you have a
Yeah.
thought bubble.
You've got a pet peeve about food. What is it?
Oh, half-eaten anything, a picture of half-eaten anything with some crazy bar light, it really is like you're not helping anybody out there.
Yeah,
You're
and
not
if you
telling
take a
the person
picture
to do it.
of the tiramisu, right?
Uh-huh.
Maybe find a way to have you in the photo with the tiramisu, or just pull back a little bit so that if you want the tiramisu to be the primary thing, put up
Yeah.
the menu next to it so it says the name of where you're at. There's all kinds of ways to do this, and that make the photo more interesting than just a photo of tiramisu.
That might tell a better story too.
That's exactly right. Back to storytelling. Excellent.
Mhm.
Instagram has taught us the value of post production. I never thought I would be interested in things like ratios and
Mhm.
pixels and
Mhm.
exposure. And
Yeah.
on the iPhone, my favorite new feature is called Black Point because it helps you define black in different ways. And
Yeah.
the new iPhone 8, so I just dated the video, right? Because the iPhone 8 is going to be old very soon, has a portrait setting, which actually fuzzes up the background.
Mhm.
And on a normal camera, you have to change lenses and do a telephoto lens, get really tight on the primary subject to do that. And it's on here now. So, what are
Yeah.
your favorite techniques for quick edits on an iPhone, for example?
I would say cropping would be number one, and
Oh,
making sure that you just create the crop and wherever you're going to be putting on social media. And the nice thing about Instagram, it's a square, and a square's a nice limitation to work within. So I really like that. And then looking at the exposure, and because there's some great controls even in Instagram of the shadow control and the brightness control and the contrast control. Those are the simple things that I always work with. And the really fun thing, which is like the blurring out in the background, where you have like a little circle that's sharp, and then everything kind of like fuzzes out in the back. Those types of things those are fun effects.
where's that? Instagram?
Yeah, yeah.
What's that called? Do you know?
What did they call that? Geez, oh Pete, you'd think I know that off at the top of my head, wouldn't you? But it's into the editing function of when you get into Instagram of the image, and it's right down the list of the brightness and the shadows and stuff.
I'll see if I can find it. If you're watching this video and you know what this technique is called, please type it into comments. We'll make sure that everybody knows about it. Excellent tips. Um, and if you bother to take pictures, you're probably taking pictures of yourself or people you love. Doesn't it seem like it's worth a couple of extra seconds to make those people look good and look favorable, especially if you're marketing a brand or telling a story, which is our next, how we're going to close out. You had mentioned telling a story a few times now. There are many people who are using photography to launch a product or
Yeah,
market a business. Or
yeah,
in my case, I'm a professional speaker, and I never post photos of me in an unflattering light because I'm trying to
hmm,
show everybody how professional I am. And you
right,
could argue two professionals not good.
yeah,
So there's a balance, and everybody gets to choose. But in general, we're using a bunch of images to create a storyline, yeah,
yes,
and
that's correct.
stories within the story.
That's right. And it's a brand image. And it's interesting that, for example, for me, Mark Einhaus, my brand image is media hero, and the things media hero does, which is, well, media content, which isn't just photography, but it's anything that would live in media and where it will live after it is completely produced. And making sure that when you're telling the story, whatever it is, that you hold true to whatever that brand image and culture is across the board. So it creates a narrative all over the time of who you are, what you look like, and how you see yourself in the marketing world. And that is a really important thing. And it's nice to have and create these little limitations for yourself because it ends up making you look stronger and easier to view and understand. If it is complicated with a lot of different things in an image that are not supporting your brand, you're not going to help yourself out in the content imaging world in any way. And you really, really, it's really important that you take those considerations when you're working.
Sure. You know, this brand awareness often comes about through collaboration, both purposeful collaboration and things that just happen accidentally. When I'm traveling, I'm often watching to see what people take photographs of, to see
Hmm.
what they see. Sometimes it's interesting enough for me to actually take my own version. Sometimes I
Hmm.
say, you know, they're wasting their time here. They're shooting against the sun, right? It's
Yeah.
never going to work. So in our travels, and Renee and I are out all over the world, we're always trying to borrow ideas and collaborate accidentally with other
Hmm.
photographers. By the way, Mark, you're invited. You might as well get this invitation out there. We have a life mastery retreat. I'm not inviting you in particular, although I do want you to come if you can make it. But at these retreats, we talk about things like paying attention to what's going on around us, powers of observation, things that in
Hmm.
general would help photography skills. And
Hmm.
of course, more information about that online. Life Mastery Retreat, Michael Angelo
Hmm.
Caruso. Mark, you are fantastic. You are a great source of inspiration for me. And we want people to know that they can find you online at Mark Einhaus, which is this. I'll give you the spelling, but I'll tell you where to find him on the website. It's Einhaus. It's a nice Italian name, yeah.
Right, right, right. Very Italian.
And Mark's website is mediahero.com, mediahero.com. Mark, I think you're a visual genius. I've always enjoyed working with you, and I know that we've got some things planned for the future.
Well, thank you, Michael. I appreciate you having me here, and I'm looking forward to working with you. Yeah.
Thanks very much. We'll see you soon.
Okay.
Bye, Mark.
Bye-bye.